Hi everyone, it's Dr. Hudgens. I am sending you this video to provide some feedback for week one's work and to give you some guidelines or some additional guidance on how to approach your discussion board for week two. Your content overall this week was well done. In general, you all really understood the value of varying your types of leadership styles based on the situation that occurred within the clinical setting. So those topics were well explored. It was good to see the discussion of how leadership and management are different and the importance of both of them. Your classmate, Lindsay, did an especially good job of giving a clear description of leadership and management. Lindsay wrote that leadership and management are two wheels on the same bicycle. Leadership is the front wheel used for steering, direction, and decision making. The rear wheel is used for power, control, and momentum. Both are required to keep the organization in balance. Leaders influence people, and managers influence situations. I thought that was a very astute way to kind of put management and leadership in a nutshell, and to provide clarity on the concepts. As you move through this course, we're going to keep coming back to what does it mean to lead an organization and what does it mean to manage the processes within that organization. And I want you to be able to finesse the difference. Now, we're going to shift topics for a moment and talk about APA. There's some room for improvement with APA. So I want you to know that if this was an area that you struggled with, that the next assignment, that most of the time APA writing is basically a knowledge deficit. This isn't that you are a horrible writer. It just means that you haven't really learned to use the APA formatting at the level it needs to be used at the graduate level of writing. I'm going to hit some highlights just for some common things that I saw. First, I want you to be aware that any paper you submit for graduate writing needs to use level headings. Most papers will lend themselves to level 1 and level 2 heading. Some papers, once they get to be about 6, 7, 8 pages, then you start thinking about whether you need to add a level 3 heading. The best source of knowing which level is used for which purpose is to use your APA manual. It is important that you own this manual. If you are using online resources or formatting tutorial, those tutorials will not tell you when to use a level heading. That's something that you need to develop your own knowledge base for. So from this point forward, no paper should be turned in without level headings being used appropriately. The other thing I want to caution you about is the use of direct quotes. You want to avoid directly quoting anyone unless there is no better way to paraphrase what you have read. And I'll tell you that that's pretty rare that there isn't a way for you to paraphrase what you've read. When you do read something, and even if it's a Bible verse, it's okay to paraphrase God. It's okay for us to say, this is the message that was involved in this verse, and cite the verse. I think the things that directly quoting, if you don't have a comfort level with using your own interpretation of sharing what a verse says from the Bible, that may be an area that it's okay to directly quote. But I want to caution you, if you are directly quoting a verse in the Bible, it needs to have context. Do not just drop a verse into the body of a paper and not explain why this verse is related to what you put it, to the content in that section. Very often I see students, they'll write a great paragraph and it's all about one topic, and then they wrap up the paragraph by citing a verse without saying why they cited it. I think some people think that by putting the verse in there, that maybe they've maximized their Christian worldview by dropping it in there, but also that they believe that there's a meaning in that verse that's personal to them that others don't read the same way. We know that there's lots of interpretations of what people take from Bible verses. So when we talk about direct quotes, I want you to avoid them as much as possible. If you choose to use direct quotes of a Bible verse, make sure that you properly cite it and that you put it in context and provide meaning for why you are citing that verse. The last thing I want to talk about are the use of DOIs within your reference page. Any article that is current and available in a database. Current, we think last 5 years, and that's the time frame you should be using. Excuse me. If it is a current article, a DOI should be available. If it is not available, I want you to go back and look at the article and make sure that it is a scholarly, peer-reviewed journal. If you verified that and you're sure that it is a scholarly, peer-reviewed journal, I want you to then use an abbreviated URL to tell me where you found that article. You do not have to go back into a database and copy select all, the entire hyperlink, and drop that in. Many of you will find that if you do that, you've got 5, 6, 7, 8 lines of a URL. I just want an abbreviated URL that tells me the general area where you found it. Again, the use of a URL should be a one-off, not standard practice. If you're using evidence-based, peer-reviewed current journals, you should be finding DOIs associated with it. And if you don't, just double check it. I'm not saying that you won't find good sources that don't have DOIs. Some journals are small and don't have the resources to get into the DOI database. Just use caution. It's kind of one of those red flags I want you to look for. When you think about preparing for next week, you've got a discussion board. I want you to approach your discussion board in the same scholarly manner that you would writing a paper. But I want you to be mindful that a discussion board, that you don't need to have a cover page. You can write it in a Word document and copy and paste it into the body of a discussion board. If you do copy and paste, go back into the discussion board and clean up some of the formatting. Don't make yourself crazy nuts over everything being perfectly spaced, but it should look like a reasonable attempt at good paragraph formation. The big things I look for in your discussion boards are the use of proper in-text citations, a good reference list that's reasonably properly formatted, and that the content is covered. And I want you to cover it in a concise manner. Discussion boards should be your primary thread about 500 words. If you're writing 1,500 words for a discussion board, it means that you're writing more than is necessary. Okay? Be concise. Answer the question, answer it with enough scholarly support, and know that anything you put in a discussion board, you need to use the same behaviors of citing and providing support for any ideas you have, but do it in a concise manner. So don't overwork yourself and overdo by thinking that the more I write, the more accurate I will be. That's not necessarily true. Sometimes we write so much we walk ourselves into bunny trails and get lost. So be concise and be direct in how you answer your discussion boards. If you have questions or you have concerns, touch base and let me know. The other thing to be aware of with your discussion boards is time matters. Be on time. Your first discussion board is due. Your primary thread is due by Thursday. The responses are due by Sunday. Discussion boards, there's no late policy. If it's not done on time, it's not accepted. So I want you to be very mindful of watching those time frames so that you can be fully successful. Okay, I think that's it. If you all go through my feedback, if you have questions, I want you to touch base with me. Send me an email and we'll set up either a time to answer your questions or we can chat by phone. The hardest assignment is always the first assignment. And some of that comes from just not knowing exactly how that professor is going to approach an assignment or what their grading style is. So if you have questions, again, I'm here. I know that online learning can kind of feel a little lonely and you feel like you're out there. You're not alone. I'm here. So know that I'm around if you have questions. Otherwise, I will look forward to reading your discussion boards next week and getting you some feedback. Y'all take care.